There's a lot of stimulus. I would say right now there's a new sense of optimism because our essential workers have received at least the first vaccine for the most part. A lot of our parents have received the first and second. My parents have received the first and second vaccine, which is great. Not everyone's have, but many have. So there's a sense of optimism in first quarter. When we go into April, June, a lot of that money is going to have dried up, and we're still not going to have a complete rollout. Candidly, like many of the folks in the UK, we're still going to probably have some snow on the ground, and there is something that happens mentally before spring, and we can't get indoors in terms of a lot of restaurants quite yet. Although here in New York, we've got restaurants open with about 25% of seating capacity indoors, and we have a lot of street parking outside the shops that have been converted into sheds that people can eat in. But it's quite cold right now, so there's some adoption of that. In the email or the CEO letter that I put out, I would say the number one thing that people my age have responded to is my comment that July through September will be like MTV spring break, which I think most of the people on the call will know what that event was for my generation. I assume they still have it. But it's going to be wild here in the US, July through September, in terms of consumer spending. People are going to rush out to eat, drink, vacation. We all want to see each other. There's going to be a surge of consumer spending. Then things are going to start to normalize, right? We may have another spike that happens as we approach winter. We likely won't have another round of stimulus money here. And things will begin to physically get cool again as we approach the holidays. And I think that's when we're going to see what happens in terms of antibodies, the next round of vaccines, and kind of the new normal will take shape as we go into 2022.
So yes, lockdown 3, that currently means, for anyone that's not familiar, no mixing outside of your household, stay at home is the message, work from home, homeschooling for everybody unless you're a key worker, basically. So no retail apart from essential food shops, pet food shops and hardware, and no hospitality, takeaways basically, and there's no fun stuff. Zoos are not open, there's no outdoor events going on, basically stay at home. As you've mentioned, the vaccine program is progressing well, and to date, as of today, it's 17.9 million members of the public have been vaccinated with their first dose. The second dose is significantly less than that. It's less than 1 million. It's been distributed in order of priority, but the government are kind of into the over 60s phase at the moment. They've committed to everybody, all adults, receiving the vaccine before the end of July. So we shall see how that continues to progress. But it's quite tough at the moment, I think. Hospital figures are high, deaths are high. We're all a bit fed up with being at home, but thankfully we don't have any snow on the ground still. We are certainly starting to see the signs of spring. Schools are returning on the 8th of March, so that's very much in sight. And there's a staged plan for easing the lockdown and increasing that social contact and those fun events that we're also desperate of. So COVID has definitely been a significant factor, of course, in London, but across the UK and across the world, I believe, in terms of companies rethinking their portfolios, the way that they use space, their need for space, are all key factors. If we're talking about disruptors, I can't really ignore the B word, Brexit. Kind of got forgotten about a little bit with COVID, but the melodrama of it being on, off, in, out of a deal was probably harder to keep up with than the changing COVID restrictions. It's been a challenge. But I think so far for your average Joe, the main impact has been kind of longer delivery times, challenging supply chains, additional costs on larger cost items, and perhaps an impact on the City of London. But in short, it's kind of negative effect. The magnitude is still uncertain. We don't really know what will occur there. We've clearly got an increase in unemployment. We have a furlough scheme that has been running in the UK, funded by the government, but that increase in unemployment has shot up. Although at present it's not as high as it has been following the global financial crisis. So we shall wait and see really what happens there. But those are the kind of significant impacts, I think, at the moment.
In terms of daily life, it's almost the same as in London. For the last 4 months, Germany has been in a lockdown phase, in the second one. This means the gastronomy and retail sector is completely closed, only except for takeaway or delivery service and grocery stores. Schools and kindergartens are closed, but lucky-wise, since Monday, some schools are open again in a hybrid system. In terms of vitality in the city, for almost 1 year, we have no concerts, no clubs, events, public activities. Everything is closed except to small events during recent summer in 2020. And revenue is non-existent because many hotels have been closed. Business trips are allowed, however, not vacation. And regarding to government orders, only maximum 3 people from 2 households are allowed to stay together. And if possible, work from home. The direction from the government is, as in London, stay at home. So in summary, most of the Berliners have not left the city during the lockdown phase, unlike New Yorkers and Londoners. For the most part, city dwellers have stayed home in their primary residences. And the following are maybe 4 reasons for that. Berlin's young foreigners who come for work in the city have no other possibilities than to stay in the city. The second, Germans in general are very submissive and disciplined to the government. And then you have to know some federal states do not allow to enter the border from another federal state. And Berlin is an own federal state. And the last point, which could be a reason for that, Germans love their home. In 2020, the Berlin government implemented a new residential rent control rule for every apartment in the city, except for apartments built after 2014. This law is initially set at 5 years with an option to extend. The aim is to provide a better care in residential for low-income households and to fight against the shortage of living spaces in Berlin. So from November 2020, the tenants can reduce their rent according to a price list published by the government, based on criteria like, for example, building year, flooring type, or kitchen type. According to a regional association, the range of the rent reductions per apartment is between 11 and 50%. For example, you paid before the reduction $20 per square foot or 20 pounds. Now you pay $10 per square foot or 10 pounds. So from the social aspect, I would say, yes, this is a good ambition, but in the end, it will not solve our problems with limited living spaces in Berlin. For residential investors and owners, it's a critical circumstance because it means a massive loss of income and billions less investment in existing buildings over the next 5 years. And in 5 to 10 years, many Berlin apartments and buildings could be in a declining state. Furthermore, the rent reduction may influence only the very strong residential areas where people have a high income anyway. So from my point of view, this law is a mistaken approach. But however, we will see.
In the US, and I'm going to guess in your countries as well, industrial was 2020's top performer, and it will likely do even better in 2021. It is so far. Retail bankruptcies have reached a 12-year high amid the pandemic. I will comment that most of those were not single tenant assets that are in my direct space, but I think we had 244 filings within energy, retail, and consumer services companies filed last year. That's companies you may know like Steinmart, JCPenney, Brooks Brothers, Neiman Marcus. There are a few single tenants like 24 Hour Fitness, Guitar Center, VIP Cinema Holdings. Those aren't really surprising when you think movie theaters, fitness, etc. there clearly are a lot of restaurants, and I would say in New York City in particular, you know, very much like London and Berlin, we really pride ourselves um, on non-chain restaurants, on you know, great local establishments, and a lot of them have done terribly through the pandemic. Many have declared bankruptcy. Many won't come back. A lot of the famous chefs here probably are going to reconfigure and start with completely new concepts.
You know, like New York and the US, the industrial certainly has been a top performer. That has seen a record year in 2020, with the strongest quarter on record in Q4, and continues to do brilliantly, mainly through the growth in the online retail sector, and these kind of post and parcel operators, the logistics of getting things from A to B. But there's weak supply, so you know, rents are on the increase. Of course, that is outside of central London. Typically, we don't have industrial space in central London. Retail, on the other end, is a bit of a sad story. COVID has accelerated change that was already coming about consumer behaviour, lack of innovation, the online growth that we've already mentioned. But we've seen some significant casualties along the way, and particularly in the last 6 months, some really large, you know, retail occupiers have you know, gone into liquidation. And even this week, John Lewis, who, you know, are a well-known stalwart of the British High Street for the last 150 years, are understood to be closing a further 8 stores of their remaining 42. They've already closed 8 this year, so that's a significant effect in our retail. The worst year on record. And you know, how is that going to continue is going to be interesting. I think it's hoped that interest in shopping locally, you know, Camille, you referenced those independent shops. People appear to have developed a far more community-minded spirit through COVID. So there's a hope, I think, that will bring growth to some of the smaller high streets, but it's certainly massively affecting, you know, these out of town and you know, large high street locations. Office, unfortunately, as well, wasn't particularly you know, brilliant. The Q4 figures in London were at a real low point, a consecutive quarterly falls last year, and the lowest quarter on record since records began in 1984, which I thought was quite an interesting fact. I didn't know that. But also the lowest annual record. So volumes down about 60% in comparison to last year. So that's a significant decrease. Having said that, you know, there was something going on. It wasn't like nobody was doing anything. Banking and finance were the largest portion of the take-up, at about 25%, with the creative industries following behind that. Companies in sort of tech and creative, Twitter took, you know, 30,000 square foot, for example, of expansion space. But vacancies increasing. Investments were strong, had a strong finish to the year, and you know, a flurry of last deals, but were still low in comparison to previous years. And really, what do we expect for 2021? I think, you know, below trend for 2021. Growth perhaps in some areas, some sectors like life sciences, we're going to see, you know, shifts in that. And I think choice comes back into it. Where do people want to work from? You know, that's going to impact these city centre portfolios. Head offices and these hub locations, these central locations, are going to have to be appealing to get people into them. The office is by no means dead, but it needs to be somewhere that you want to go to collaborate, not somewhere that you go and sit at a desk. So no more bland, soulless spaces. They need to be interesting, exciting, enticing to get people into there. And I think that's a shift that we're really going to see in the next, you know, in the next year, certainly.
Yeah, Berlin was once referred to a poor but active city. Over the last 10 years, it developed into a city which is a European competitor. In 2019, it was one of the most successful years, mainly in office leasing and investment. Currently, the investment market is a bit quieter. Potential tenants are hesitant to make decisions within the lockdown phase. Due to uncertainty, there are no planning options. Yeah, and the following some more information about the office market. 2020 was still a solid year in Berlin, with a take-up of approximately 7.7 million square feet. If you consider the slump in the middle of the year caused by COVID-19, it was absolutely good. And this means it's a 32% different to the record year 2019, which was unique in the last 10-year history of the Berlin office market. The 10-year average is approximately 8 million square feet. Yeah, the vacancy rate of 1.8% is still very low in Berlin. And the prime rent remains ambitiously at approximately $54 per square foot, or 38 pounds. And the average rent increased a bit to $36 per square foot, or 26 pounds. Yeah, the Berlin office market will remain to its line 2020, I'm sure. Popular, stable, and prepared for any uncertain circumstance. Berlin is and will the destination of crisis-proof industries such as insurance, IT service providers, healthcare, research, and for sure the public sector. And I'm sure the demand of office spaces will increase rapidly after the COVID-19 period. And yeah, prices will remain stable. Finally, let's come to the industrial sector. Yeah, Berlin's industrial sector and its surrounding area is strong in trade, logistic, and production. Mainly the trade sector is very strong with e-commerce and online trade. One of the biggest online trader is the fashion shop Zalando. I think in the UK it's also very popular. And they have their headquarters in Berlin. According to CBRE, the 2020 take-up was 4.7 million square feet, which was 10% less than in 2019. But the same year, against the background of COVID-19, it's a good result and absolutely in the average of the recent 5 years. In the city itself, the take-up was limited because of the space shortages we have. However, Berlin's surrounding areas offer many space potentials. For example, in the surrounding of our new gigafactory from Tesla, which is currently under construction. They build a building which should have 4.3 million square feet for more than 10,000 employees. Yeah, and in addition, I noticed that many investors changed or expanded their investment strategies and moved into the industrial or light industrial sector all over Germany. The most important things you already said. Yeah, HB Reavis from Slovakia. Yeah. They built the property district. It's located in the eastern part of Berlin. And this will be a so-called well-being building. So the building will have these workspace analytics, control of light, air, and temperature. They will have a digital access system via mobile, a fitness studio, a bike garage, shower stations, and I'm very excited about the many green places inside and outside. They will have food concepts in the common area and many more elements for good working vibes. Yeah. And the second developer is Edge Technologies from the Netherlands. They develop their buildings in a holistic way, creative and innovative buildings in which the human being comes first. Yeah. Just recently, their building Grand Central next to the central station of Berlin is finished. It's the smartest and most innovative building in Germany. It delivers a dynamic environment where general office health is the key. With an for example, with an intelligent mobile app, especially for the building, each employee is able to control light, temperature, and sun protection. Edge Technologies also developed a special sensor technology for improving the energy efficiency and working conditions. And furthermore, this is really interesting. Currently, they built an office building in Berlin via a modular wooden hybrid construction with an open ecosystem using natural-based architectural elements. Yeah, it's one of Berlin's best business stories in 2020. The so-called Gorillas app. Here you can buy your groceries with only a few clicks in your app, and you will receive your items in 10 minutes. And yes, it's true, because we ordered several times, and sometimes they even come in 5 to 8 minutes. Also champagne or one butter, we did it. And they are available from early in the morning until short before midnight. And if it's only one banana, it's possible. How it works? Gorillas rent former retail and gastronomy spaces for their goods in different places of Berlin. And from these stations, their employees deliver via e-bikes. This concept is bringing a supply chain and a type of logistic into the city center in a way we have never had before in Berlin. And in the meanwhile, Gorillas collected $44 million from investors. They have approximately 800 employees and are expanding to other cities in Germany and Europe.
I just wanted to say thank you to the panelists. I love this conversation. It's an amazing exchange, like I said, of intel. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to connecting soon.